Hello, YouTube. This is Zach, and today I have the honor and privilege to have not only a good friend of mine, but an absolutely incredible musician here. This is Myles Yang, the composer and sometimes singer from the now defunct band Native Construct. They're a progressive metal band, but they had one album that was like a flash in the pan, and I believe it to be a masterpiece. I think it's incredible. I still listen to it to this day. And Myles, thank you for being here.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Go ahead and tell my viewers a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
I was in the band, like you said. That's one of the main things people might know me from. The other thing is I have a YouTube channel. I do like educational music theory content. That's pretty much it. I teach music theory privately as my main job.
What's your background? Where'd you come from? What's your educational background?
I came from North Carolina. As far as music goes, I was mostly self-taught. Like I started getting really into music, like at the beginning of middle school, like sixth grade, and I just was like super interested in it. I did a lot of just exploration on my own. I played the guitar. I would kind of just play whatever I wanted on guitar as like my main hobby for like from sixth grade until like through the end of high school. I was kind of pretty focused on that and just trying to figure out how to write music. It was all very experimental. And then I ended up going to music college, Berklee College of Music in Boston. And so I got a lot more like formal education there, which was very helpful. Um, that's pretty much it. We started the band in college, and so
Yeah.
we just kind of went from there.
So the reason that I'm talking, I mean, Miles and I are, like I said, friends outside of this, but the reason I wanted to, have him as like an interview is because Native Construct just the album Quiet World they released just had its 10-year anniversary, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Time flies, man. Like it's hard to believe the album's 10 years old. I'm sure you feel that way
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I met Miles by I discovered their music. I don't even remember how I discovered Quiet World, but I love the album. I think that it is one of the best examples of progressive metal music at its best. That's and I think that even though the band only released one album, I mean it's still in my view a gold standard in terms of like utilization of concepts like leitmotif, like things being as through composed as they can be in the prog metal world in comparison to like the classical approach. I mean, obviously, I know you didn't write it classically; you had more of like a jazz educational background, but and contemporary, but it has elements of that. Um, and I always loved everything about the vocal melodies, the just the general conception of it, the way the lyrics tied in so well with the melodic themes. Like it's just an incredible album. And if you viewers, if you have not listened to it yet, just go listen to it. I mean, it's really great. It stood the test of time too, I think.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's all just very nice to hear. Obviously, because all the things you're saying are like things that I hoped people might appreciate, but I really had no idea because that's the kind of stuff you have to really pay attention when you're listening to appreciate. So I just didn't know if like all of my efforts were going to be just wasted on people who just like listen to it once and just like whatever, and they just don't notice everything that I was trying so hard to do. But yeah, people like you have noticed and cared, so I really appreciate that.
Never underestimate the power of prog metal nerds. They will go
Yeah,
to any length.
honestly, yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
but
true.
yes. So I discovered Miles. I didn't really know him at all, but um, I think I sent him a message on Facebook at some point. I think I sent you a message, and then I remember like I told you that I love the music or whatever, and you thanked me. But then one day, you put up a video of yourself singing and playing guitar on Facebook, and I mean, obviously, This is before my YouTube channel, but I was teaching at a music school as at a voice teacher at the time, and so it was about 2 years into my teaching career, I think, and I remember hearing him sing, and I was like, well, he needs work. And like I remember
Yeah.
thinking like he has an ear obviously and he knows how to match pitch, but like there are some things that there's just some stuff that he needs some guidance and some instruction on. He wasn't. I think actually, were you asking for vocal tips? I think the post you made was saying like, hey, anybody gotten some ideas on how I can sing this better or something like that. I don't
Yeah, maybe
remember.
that's entirely possible. I think at least said something about how I was just trying to figure out how to do voice and that I found it surprisingly difficult.
Maybe that's what it
So,
was. Yeah. So I sent you a message, and I basically offered Miles. I said, well, I was completely obsessed with Quiet World for the better part of 2 years, and it was such a huge influence on me, and I loved it so much that I'd be happy to, for the sake of you continuing your musical career and developing as a musician, I'd be happy to work with you. And so we just sort of started from there, and we haven't done any like proper voice lessons in a long time, but there was a time there where we were working regularly together, and you saw a lot of development, I think, in your singing sound. I think that you kind of had almost like no conception of you were just kind of doing whatever you thought you should do. And but I remember distinctly, you after a few lessons and getting some basic insight on the mechanism, you started seeing some pretty substantial changes in your sound.
yeah. Yeah, first of all, that was super nice of you to reach out and offer. And it was really helpful. Just a little bit goes a long way, even like if you know nothing. I mean, and obviously you have a very good idea of like what are the most important things to start with. So yeah, it was very high impact, I would say, even the small amount of training we did together.
Yep. How much do you sing now?
Not much. I'm sorry.
No,
I've not really stuck with the
it's, like,
practice.
it's okay.
Um,
I mean, I'm just curious.
yeah, not a ton. It's something that I still would like to be better at. I just, it takes a lot of dedicated practice and time, and I have not made the time for it.
Well, I'm always here, man. But yeah. Anyway, so
Word.
there, I wanted to talk about Quiet World. About the vocals. I also wanted to have like, since you are a composer, predominantly, like you consider yourself like a composer and a guitarist first, right? That's kind of an educator too. But in terms of being a performed musician, you consider yourself a composer first and foremost, right?
Yeah, for sure. Not, and I don't even really consider myself a guitarist either. That is the instrument that I have the most experience on. But yeah, I always played guitar. Well, not always. When I first got into guitar, I just liked the guitar, but pretty quickly I got more interested in writing music, and then it was just like I'm playing the guitar because I have to play the music that I'm writing. But I was never like a guitar guy. I wasn't a guitar major in school or anything, and so even less so voice. Like sometimes I have to sing, but yeah, I have not put in the time to call myself a proper vocalist by any means.
Well, you showed some guitar chops on Quiet World for sure. I mean, for not being a guitarist, you did pretty well with it. I mean, I watched your stream on Twitch where there was a lot of like comping and editing and splicing and stuff, but still, I mean, you're able to pull some pretty difficult stuff off. I mean, you did
Thanks.
all
Yeah, it
right.
was hard though. Yeah, because it was always like I wrote the stuff first and then had to go back and figure out how to play it. Like, I didn't
Gotcha.
know how to play it while I was writing it, so yeah, it was really hard. I had to practice a lot to be able to pull that stuff off.
I think we talked about this before, but I kind of want to get like an updated perspective on you on this. When you wrote Quiet World, when you were writing the vocals, did you go into it with Robert in mind as the singer, or did you just write what you wanted to hear in the vocals and said, okay, well, I'll figure this out when the time comes?
Yeah, trying to remember, it was a long time ago. So we, yeah, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, from very early on, we knew that Robert was the guy we wanted to be doing the lead vocals. And I had worked with Robert a lot. We grew up together.
Yeah.
And we both were just kind of like learning how to do music together for all those years I was talking about, from like middle school through high school. I was doing a lot with Rob at that time, and even towards like more on the high school side, did we did work together specifically with Robert as like a vocalist and me as a composer producer. So we had actually a lot of experience with that kind of thing already. And yeah, when we started the band, we knew that we wanted Rob to do the lead vocals. So I always had his voice in mind when writing the stuff, but okay, here's the thing. And this is kind of similar to what I was talking about with the guitar. stuff. Like I would write the stuff before I figured out how to play it, and it was very difficult to figure out how to play because the only constraint really I had when I was writing the stuff was like, is this physically possible? I wanted to make sure that it was physically possible to play, but it doesn't matter how hard it is as long as it's physically possible. So it was really hard to do the guitar stuff, but ended up being able to do it with a lot of practice. And it was similar with the vocals. So I did have Rob's voice in mind. Like I knew what his absolute limits were in terms of range, and you know, like he only has so much breath to do certain things. You know, I was thinking about that, but I was not trying to make it easy for him at all. So there's stuff that's
demanding.
like extremely difficult for the voice, but he was able to do it all. You know, with enough takes, enough practice, some live modifications.
Yeah, I remember hearing the band and just thinking like, wow, Robert is like, this guy is, he sounds a little different from the typical prog singer. This guy's got some kind of a unique sound and a unique ability. I don't typically compare singers to Daniel Gildenlau from Pain of Salvation very much because he kind of has his own like really unique, distinctive timbre. But Robert is probably the only singer. I mean, Daniel had influences from Mike Patton, you know, Mr. Bungle, but I think that Robert is probably the only other prog singer that I would say has a somewhat similar timbral, like kind of approach that both of those guys do. I could also hear the Mr. Bungle influence in Robert singing as well. Like there was, you know, some Mike Patton influence. I've never talked to him directly about that, but just from hearing the sounds that he created and stuff, it sounded like Mike Patton was a hero of his.
Yeah, Mike Patton and just Mr. Bungle in general, even just for the music part, definitely a big influence. Also, like Between the Buried and Me was a huge influence, as everybody who's heard the music can tell. And I know that
right?
And Mr. Bungle was a huge influence on Between the Buried and Me. So it's even like it's all in there, even like directly and indirectly.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can hear it. I mean, it did. I never thought the Native Construct sounded derivative of either of those bands. Like, there was definitely, you occupy your own like sound. You know, it had its own thing going on. Like I think about songs like, you know, like Passage. It was one of my favorites from the album, and that doesn't sound like anything that Between the Buried and Me or Mr. Bungle did. It definitely had its own sort of sound. I think that there was almost like, and I mean maybe this is the wrong word. I can't immediately think of a better word. I think there was almost like a playfulness in some of the sounds of Native Construct, the album as a whole, like not just Passage, but there was almost this playful sound, like almost like it was a little bit. And this word I think is overused, but almost experimental, like almost like maybe there was an approach to it of like, we're gonna write this and it's gonna have these musical concepts in it. We're also just gonna kind of let it rip and see what happens. Would you say that that was sort of the approach? Did you take that approach to it?
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, because like in some ways there was a lot of like big picture thinking and planning and like structure going on. So it's not like everything was just like totally random throughout the composition process, but there was like definitely a permission granted to do a lot of different things, sometimes weird things, sometimes even like comedy. I'd say there's a lot of comedy on the album.
Yeah, there's some memes in the album, you know, at least memes of the time. Like nowadays, those memes would be probably dated, but you know, there were some little memes hidden in there. Yeah, it was such an awesome album. I mean, I still listen to it to this day. I mean, I you know, obviously I don't spend as much as I did when I was like obsessed with it, but I mean, it's still something that when I hear, I go like, yeah, I'll listen to this. You know, if it comes through my playlist or whatever, I definitely listen. And I know that well, maybe I can let you explain this to yourself. Your taste or your approach to music writing has pretty substantially changed since you released that album, right?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, I went through a bit of a period, like honestly, like around the time we released that album, and like especially like even more so a couple years after, I started to feel really tired of metal and prog. And it was, you know, it's prog metal, so it's got both of those.
Yeah,
the prog and the metal.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, like I had been so into that kind of music, metal and prog metal, for like so long at that point. which is why we made a prog metal band, because I was like super into prog metal for a long time. But it just like you just get tired of it after. I mean, I got tired of it after a while. It had just been like so much of that, and we made like this extremely prog metal album.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd say it's like we had like a character creator slider. It was the prog metal slider. It'd be like all the way to the right.
Yeah, it's the quintessential prog metal like concept album. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, so I just felt like okay, we did that, and now like I don't really want to do that again so much. So we were working on new material for Native Construct for a while, and it was
I heard something
very, very different. Yeah, it was like I went through a little phase where I wanted to do like almost the opposite of prog metal, which is like much more accessible, like digestible music, like for a way less niche audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I still really appreciate that kind of music too. Like popular music, I think there's very deep art in making music that is easy to enjoy, and that is meaningful to a large group of people, as opposed to just a very specific type of person. And I could go on about that for a while, but
ahead.
I think that music is very interesting still. But I've come around since. I think metal's cool again now, and I can go back and listen to the prog stuff, and it's definitely cool too. I hate to give this answer, but really the answer is I listen to all sorts of stuff. I mean, lately I can just talk about what I've been listening to lately. I've been listening to a lot of bluegrass. Maybe it's because I'm back in North Carolina now. But yeah, I really
you
like
introduced me to
bluegrass right
Punch
now.
Originally, you were the one who introduced me. And
I agree.
I still listen to them now. Like, oh man, Familiarity is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah, me
song
too.
is an absolute masterpiece. I mean, I've never heard anything like it before. Check audience,
it's
check
prog
that song
also.
out. Yeah, it's prog grass. Like, it's Familiarity by Punch Brothers. Check that song out, man. I love it so much. Yeah, and so Myles has always had really good taste in music. He's introduced me to a lot of stuff just over the years. Just kind of, I've asked him for suggestions and things like that. He's always had some pretty interesting, good stuff to listen to. But and you've got a really in terms of classical taste, you have a very unique taste in classical music too. The things that you've let me hear and the things that you shared with me is pretty different from the type of things that you. I mean, yes, like the composers are talked about, but like when you take like Western Music Lit and University and stuff like that, like you don't really do deep dive. We didn't do deep dives into Ravel. We talked about Ravel, but we didn't have like, and we might have done a Ravel piece once every few years or something. But like I know he was one of your big influences, and so that you got me listening to some of his music. His music's very interesting and very uniquely composed as well.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad you have still enjoyed that stuff for so long. That's cool.
So what is your I mean, obviously you're a teacher now predominantly, but what is going on in your compositional world, if anything?
Not much right now. I'm just been focused on the teaching, and I mean lately this band stuff has been taking up a lot of my time. Yeah, not much composing at the moment.
And so I'm going to operate under the assumption that this, much to the chagrin of all of the prog metal fans out there, Native Construct is still on a permanent hiatus.
Yeah, no plans for anything right now. I mean, I wouldn't say permanent though. I mean, you never know.
You heard it here first,
yeah,
guys.
I would. Yeah, I mean, I would love to do more stuff at some point. Just when the time is right. To be honest, it's so difficult to like do that while also trying to make a living, because the Native Construct stuff does not make us a living, unfortunately. And it's just so much work. It's so much time and effort. Like it's just gotta focus on other things mostly.
I get it. One of the biggest critiques I get from people is, well, you don't perform. How can you be a teacher if you don't do it? And I'm like, have you ever tried being a professional teacher? Like, first off, try to have the energy to go out and do it once you've taught for like 5 or 6 hours in a day. And like second off, as a singer, there's a stamina part of this. Like if you're talking all day, that's you're using your voice to do that too. It's not like you're using your voice to speak. It's the same as your instrument. So there are elements of
Yeah.
vocal fatigue that come into it. And like when I'm thinking about listening to other people's like timbres and embouchure and breath management and legato and like listening to warm ups all day. Like when I think about being done, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go chill and play some video games or something. Like I'm not thinking about singing anymore. So I understand that too. Like when being a music educator is such a predominant part of your life, it's hard to find that space in your head to go out and actually do what you're teaching. Like I feel that. And now I know some people who do both, but I'm not one of those people. And maybe you're suggesting that it's tough for you in a sense too.
Yeah, I mean, there's that part. There's like the just having energy to do it part, but on top of that, it's like just there's only so many hours in the day,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah.
like it would take up almost all my time if I was gonna make a whole other Native Construct album
Yeah.
for like a very long period. It would be like it would have to dominate my life because I can't just like. I mean, I guess I could technically just do like a little bit like just like barely focus on it for like a very long time, but that's never how I've worked. I like to really like immerse in the project, and I think that's how I do my best work. So it would have to be like a time where I could really focus on it for a long time. That's just not the time I'm
Yeah.
in right now.
Well, just this is for the viewers, just to give you guys a random thought that popped in my head. Myles is on the extremely, extremely short list in my mind of like premier teachers when it comes to these topics. Like, if you are interested in music theory, if you're interested in learning about the construction and composition of music, I cannot think of a single person that comes to mind that is better. I know other people who are very good, but I can't think of anyone who is better. So, like, if you're wanting
Oh, thank you so
theoretical
much.
instruction, like Myles is, like, hit him up. Like, he's the man. Like, he's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hit me up.
he helped me some. Like, 'cause, so when I had a thoroughly classical education. Like the stereotypical like classist classical musician like education where like oh well like to the point where our department head one of my best friends for his senior project composed a video game score for his senior project, and he was a voice major. Instead of doing a voice recital, he did a senior project with a composition. And I remember distinctly, like our department head thought that it was like minimalism and not what our department represents to do like this video game music isn't legitimate and all this stuff. Like I mean, nowadays like there's a more classical approach to a lot of video game composition than anything. So like my education was very much like typical super like classical way is the way. So this is relevant because I've had Myles give me some instruction on some more of the contemporary theoretical concepts too, and like some of the things that he told me about in my roughly 7 years in college, I'd never even heard some of the concepts. And it's not because I got a bad education; it's just because when you're immersed in the classical world, it's a bubble. Like there now we had a jazz department at our school. I mean, it wasn't really a contemporary department; it's a jazz department, and they learned theory a little bit differently. But when you jump into the like trying to bridge that gap, there's a whole different verbiage, terminology, methods, certain note choices. I mean, there's just so many things that are different. And Myles helped me kind of. I mean, I'm not a composer, but Myles helped me bridge the gap in my mind a little bit of understanding some of the differences, and I carry that with me to this day. So there's definitely
Nice.
value if you come from a classical background in learning some of this stuff for sure. I would say.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Classical music theory is very much a puzzle, very much a bubble. Jazz is also a bubble, and there's all these bubbles,
Yeah.
which is the problem. So I like to really focus on just like the underlying raw mechanics of just music, like pre-stylistic musical mechanics. Because then, like, if you just understand things at the core, like if you understand the basic forces that are at play, then you can just do whatever you want with it. So you don't need to rely on like the guidelines that help you create a certain style of music. You can just do, you can make whatever style you want from like the first principles. So that's kind of the way I focus on theory.
Yeah, I've seen the results. I mean, some of my voice students have gone to Myles as a theory teacher, and I've seen in their work how it's been markedly developed and changed for the better from getting this understanding. So again, like, I'm not trying to glaze you too much, but like, the Myles is the man. Like, if you want some theory stuff, go to him without a doubt. So
Thank you.
I want to ask you some kind of, in the compositional world, some like philosophical questions about vocals, since you are not predominantly a vocalist, and there is, at least in the classical world, there's a huge divide in mentality between the, trying to interpret what is the composer's intent and the the vessel of the composer and their intent. So when you write something and you write a vocal melody, how much liberty are you expecting or anticipating the singer for it to take upon what you've written?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question. It depends, is the answer. It really depends on the situation. Um, it depends on the vocalist. This would be like, because it is a collaboration, certainly, between the composer and the vocalist, I would say. It's not just like the composer dictates what the vessel of the vocalist is going to do exactly. It's a collaboration. You're both making music together, but so collaborations look different in different scenarios between different people in different situations. So I would say it would be a dialogue between the composer and the vocalist, ideally, and you could figure out like where that balance lies on a case by case basis. Because some vocalists might not want to have a lot of input, and sometimes the composer might want the vocalist to have a lot of input. It kind of depends. So if you're asking about like a particular scenario, I can tell you how it went. Like if we're talking about like on Quiet World specifically, for
Yeah,
example,
that's where I was headed. I was about to ask, like, because I remember I took a pass at singing "Your Familiar Face" just for the heck of it, and I sucked at it. But he nods.
no, I was not. I was nodding. I remember you doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you did not suck at all.
But it was. I feel like I sucked at it. But the reason that I sucked in my mind is that Myles had a very clear idea of what he wanted when he wrote it, and I think that like maybe I hadn't asked him like like I didn't see the sheet music, and I kind of just used my ear to figure out as much as I could, and I just sung it to the best of what I had heard from the song, and it wasn't at all what I mean. Maybe it was loosely what Myles was looking for when he wrote it originally, and so I got the impression that you, at least to some extent, when you wrote it, you had an expectation of even though you knew Robert and you'd been collaborating with him to some extent, like in your mind, your mind's ear, as it were, you kind of had a preconceived notion, or at least an idea of like, I want it to be like this when it on the end when it comes out the other side.
Yeah, so for that project, it was pretty specific, and that's not just for the vocalist. That's for all the music. So all of the music was composed in notation, like before we recorded anything, and it was very, very specific. Like the scores were like basically 100%. Like everything you hear on the album was like in the score, note for note, hit for hit. So that's, for the vocals, for all the instruments, it was very specific because the music was so complicated.
Yeah, of course.
When you have such dense arrangements, so many voices, all these crazy harmonies and everything, everything has to be pretty precise, or else it turns into a mess really easily.
That is one of the most harmonically dense in the realm of prog music. It's one of the most harmonically dense albums I've ever heard. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean that's a good thing. It gives you a lot to sink yourself into and you listen to. But like, I mean, there is so much to take in. I remember specifically "Spark of the Archon." I remember hearing that song for the first time and just being like, what did I just listen to? Like, there's so much to this, and so I can imagine, and Robert did so many things vocally in that song too. Like, there's so many styles and so many different approaches because of the different musical contexts that exist, and then there's these like bizarre melodies throughout the song too, like that whole I don't remember the before the chorus, like the content with hardly living life part. Like I remember that whole melody structure just being like, this is zany, man. Where did this? Like, how did he write this? You know.
Yeah, yeah, that part's hard. Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome. When you wrote the vocals for the album, were you thinking about, like you said, you were thinking about the limits of Robert's capabilities? Was that like, was it the perspective of, well, I'm going to make Robert do this, he's going to deal with it, or was it a, well, this is what I want, but if it's going to ruin him to do this, then I'll dial it back some, or were you pretty steadfast in what you wanted?
Well, define ruin. I
Define ruin. So, well, I have this. I have opinions, not about you, but I have opinions about some of the approaches that I've seen some producers take with singers that sing for them, and I've seen them just have this incredibly slapdash, like non-concerned attitude about what they're expecting their singers to do, and I take great issue with that. It's one of my from being a vocal pedagogist, it's one of my biggest issues with the modern approach in the recording industry is how much influence producers have over singers and how they don't know what vocal abuse is. A lot of them just have no idea. So when I say ruin, what I mean is like, did you care if it hurt his voice? Like, was that even something that you thought about when you wrote it?
Yeah, because we wanted all this stuff to be, like doable. First of all, like I didn't want it to be anything that like he couldn't actually pull off. Because the idea was to be an actual band that's going to play live and everything.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, definitely it was, and obviously it goes without saying he's one of my best friends. I don't want to hurt him physically either. But yeah, so like it definitely was a consideration, like making sure that these things are like doable. But again, that's basically it. As long as it was doable, it didn't matter how difficult it was. And I'm sure, to be honest, I'm sure that some of the things that he had to do on the album were not the healthiest for his voice. I don't have as specific of an understanding of like what is and is not sustainable long term for the voice as you do. But I can tell some things probably are not so good. But when we're recording the stuff, really the priority, to be honest, is to get the recording to sound the way that it needs to sound. Obviously, we're making sure that he's not completely blowing out his voice. Also, because one, again, we don't want to hurt him, but also like it wouldn't even be like that's not an effective way to run a recording session either. Because if you just lose your voice, then like you have to wait so long until you can record again. So we would take breaks as needed. We would only do as many takes as you could. We would prioritize things, like we'd do the easy stuff first, save the harder stuff for later. And yeah, it seemed like it was all pretty manageable vocal health wise, because you only have to get the right take one time and then you're done. You can move on. The thing that is, I think, more of a concern vocal health wise is when you're on tour now, having to do that every night, for a month straight. That's where some of the stuff probably is not so sustainable. Some of the stuff on the album. So, we would just make changes as needed. Like there are certain lines where instead of going up at the end, he'd just go down to like a lower note, or like just pause to take an extra breath or something, just drop off like a note or two as needed. And I think the audiences understand that, they hear people doing that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah,
they understand that like the album recording is one thing and then a live performance is a kind of different thing in some ways.
What comes to mind for me in particular when I think about the album in my mind, at Your Familiar Face specifically, there are some vocal harmonies that are just stratospherically high in there. Like and
Yeah.
I've always wondered, and it maybe this is the magician's secret, I don't know, but like, was any of that like altered digitally? Did you guys use any form of like auto tune or pitch correction to make it? Because some of that stuff is almost outside the range of like what I think almost any human could feasibly sing. Like I mean, how did you do that stuff? That's super super high stuff.
Yeah, I think the highest stuff is the background vocals in track 4, Your Familiar Face. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. That stuff's crazy. So for those background vocal textures where it's like a thick like stereo choir sound on the album, typically that was everybody in the band singing, and we would do like, okay, let's say it's like a 5-part chord at any given moment, so like 5 different notes happening at one time. We would have each person record all 5 of those notes. Like each different person in the band would do all 5 like 6 times. So it's like 6 times 5 times like 4 people in the band, however many notes that is, or however many voices that is. That's what we recorded. So first of all, it took a long time. That's a lot of takes to do. And then we just like stack them all on top of each other and pan them, and it sounds like a big, thick kind of choir sound.
So I'm hold on a minute. I'm pulling the song up on my phone here really quick because, like, hold on. Let me. Right here. Who was singing those notes?
Yeah.
I can't even. Who was doing that? Like, that doesn't seem possible. Who was singing those notes?
Yeah, so I was saying, like, typically we would all sing every note, but
all
for
of you
those,
yeah, what was
no,
that?
but for those specifically, only Robert could do those because they're ridiculously high, and he just happens to have like a crazy falsetto range or whatever you call it, head voice range.
Yeah.
He could just do that. It was really hard for him, obviously, and that's the kind of thing that he's not doing that live at all. He's singing only the lead vocals.
Well, how old was he then? Like 18, 19, something like that when you did it?
Probably maybe like 20. I'm not sure exactly.
See, that age is a lot easier to do that kind of stuff because the folds and the mechanism around it is a lot more malleable. Thing is, especially like for men, it hasn't, like when you get your mid to late 20s, things really start hardening up in your larynx. So being able to do that in insanely high stuff is a lot easier when you're younger. That's why I tell so many metal singers and like contemporary singers, particularly men, like, I know that you think it's cool that you're doing all this crazy stuff in your early to mid 20s, but you really need to think like you're going to go through some serious vocal changes in the next 15 years. Like, you're probably not going to be able to pull this stuff off when you're 40 years old, just by the nature of your voice not having the same flexibility that it does. And like I not this is not a slight on Robert at all, but I would imagine that even he would not be able to do that stuff, sing that high when he's 40 years old. Not because he's not a great singer, but just because, like, I used to have a really good head voice too, but I couldn't do that if my life depended on it now. My voice, there's just no way. I mean, not that, I don't know if I can sing that high ever, but I mean, there's been, like, when I think of singers that can do that kind of stuff consistently, there's like maybe 2 or 3, Mike Patton being one of them. And outside of that, it's really hard to think of any singers across every genre, even in the classical realm. Some of these guys that do the countertenor stuff, like being able to maintain that kind of thing into their like late 30s and 40s and stuff, it's just not very common at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and it sounds ridiculous too. So you wouldn't even want to really do a lot of that probably, but just for that one moment and that one track, yeah, we did it.
Did you use like backing tracks live for that when you played it live, or did you not have that in there at all?
I can't remember what we did for that. We might have just not. So I knew we definitely didn't sing it, so we might have just left it out. I can't really remember.
Was there when you so obviously the album is designed to be played from start to finish, but I guess when you guys played it live, you didn't play the whole album. You played like, songs from it, right?
Yeah, we only played the whole album like once or twice when we had longer sets. Most of the sets we did on tour were like 45 minutes long.
Yes, you couldn't fit the whole album in.
Actually, wait, no, it might have even been like 30-minute sets typically, because anyway, it was not the whole album typically, but we did it once or twice.
How was Robert feeling at the end of the sets? Was he pretty fatigued usually, or did he hold up pretty well?
Yeah, I think he was pretty fatigued in general. Because again, like, especially after doing it back to back to back to back nights, it really adds up. Yeah, I remember being kind of concerned at times, like hoping he was going to be able to like have enough rest between shows, and it's just so hard because you just don't actually have enough rest, and this goes for all of us, but like
Yeah,
especially the person whose body is the instrument. Like
absolutely.
you're just not getting enough sleep. You're not getting good nutrition typically on the road. It's
Yeah,
just really bad conditions, and then again, it's a show every night for a
yeah,
month straight. It's
yeah.
pretty brutal.
Yeah, I some people know this about me, some people don't, but I have a diagnosed sleeping disorder. You know, I've struggled with major sleeping problems since I was a kid. I mean, as long as I can remember, I still struggle with it to this day. And I think that I if of anybody in this, if anybody in this world can attest to that, it's me. That the amount of sleep that you get is just, I mean, in like unmeasurably important or immeasurably,
Yeah,
whatever the word is, when it comes to your ability to sing consistently. I remember when I was in
yeah.
college, you know, I'd have to sing performances. Like I had a scholarship where I had to sing for a church. I was like as part of the scholarship, and I'd have to sing these like I have to go into their church services at like 9 a.m. to sing like you know oh who oh come on Mendelssohn and stuff like that, like these big Mendelssohn pieces, and like I would be running off of 4 hours of sleep, and it was just nightmare. And I'd have juries or like recitals and stuff at like 10 in the morning, and I'm running on 5 hours of sleep. I mean, you just
Yeah, that's terrible.
I mean, you can't do it. It's just not sustainable. I had a vocal injury when I was in
Yeah.
college, and so I had to go
Mm.
to voice therapy and stuff. You know, and I think the lack of sleep was a big part of that. And so
Yeah.
touring, there are so many singers that I've heard horror stories about, you know, just not being like getting sick on tour or being so tired their voice gives out. Well, now you got six spots left on the tour. What are you gonna do? Your singer's toast. Like, how do you do it? You know? Did you ever run
Yeah.
into that with Robert, where he was just like at any point where he was just toast completely?
Uh, Not that I remember, but there's a lot that I don't remember, so maybe. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do really. I mean, if you're like really actually injured, we could like cancel shows or just play like an instrumental show maybe. But
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, no one has time to wait for you to recover on tour. It's tough.
Yeah, people are really, really demanding. Audiences are demanding, and the whole process is just a very demanding thing. I've never been on a proper tour like that. I played bass in this like really crappy metal band when I was in college, and we did like a mini tour that was like 4 days, 5 days, something like that. But it was like that was
I mean,
nothing.
even that is significant though. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was kind of it was pretty informal. We didn't have a tour bus or anything like that. Well, actually, we had a van,
We didn't
but
either.
but it was like
Yeah,
yeah.
we had been.
I think I heard the story from you too. You didn't really have a proper like you know a way of moving things around. Um, so if what is your take on the role of um like as a composer, you know, I asked you a little bit about you know like the you said that there's like a marriage between the composer and the you know the singer. If if it came down to it in your mind, you know, if it were and I've asked this question to a lot of producers and composers before too, and I just want to get your specific take. If it came down to, all right, I present you with a scenario. Let's just. I'm not going to use Robert because he's a friend of yours, but like let's say that you were in a session or studio environment, you'd written something, and you have a like a Frank Zappa type thing where you know you've got something written and you're bringing people in, and you really really like this person's sound. You wrote this because you like this individual sound that this person creates, and you want them to be the singer. But you get them into the studio, you get them to start, you know, recording or whatever, and there's this part that they just cannot do for whatever reason. Maybe it's too high, or maybe their voice doesn't make the sound you want it to. But like in your mind, you say, "Well, no, this is what I need in this part." How do you handle that? What do you do?
Um, well, again, I hate to answer it this way, but it really does depend on like the specifics of the situation. If we're imagining like for some, because on one hand, if it's possible to just, if it's truly something that can't be done by the person that has to be the person who's singing it, then like obviously changing the part so that it can be done could be an option potentially. But if we could imagine that like for some reason it isn't an option to change the part, I mean, for one thing, I have no problem personally with using studio magic. So like if it's something that could be accomplished through some sort of technological means, and if the singer was okay with doing that, that's always an option. If that weren't an option, or if like the singer didn't want that to be done, and we can't change the part, I don't really know what else there is to do. I guess the part would have to change in that case. Maybe well, this is kind of what I just said, but you could probably do it with AI.
Well, I was actually about
If it
to ask
wasn't
you about that.
possible.
What are your thoughts on people using generative AI on some like music these days in general? Like not just singing, just across the board. What are your thoughts on it?
Across the board about AI?
Yeah, and composition or
It's a
recording,
big question.
creating. Yeah, because
Oh,
it's
you
hard.
mean in
I mean,
music specifically?
yeah. Because I mean, what was it like? Wasn't there a song or a band that either didn't get a Grammy, but they were like the top of the Billboard charts or something that was completely everything about the music was completely AI generated or something recently. I
I didn't
can't.
hear about that, but
I can't.
I
I've
wouldn't be
heard the
surprised.
songs, and if I had not known that it was AI, I might not even been able to tell the difference. I can't remember what the name of the band is. Maybe I could find it afterward and let you know. But yeah, it hit the top of the charts. It's completely AI generated vocals, instruments, everything. So what are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I've heard some crazy stuff for sure, and it will only continue to improve. So I don't really know what I think about it. I mean, okay, here's what I'll just rattle off some things that I do know. I do know that it's already very good. AI is already very good at making music. I do know that it will continue to get even better. I do know this is all inevitable. I do know that there's nothing I can do to stop it. I know that it's scary because, you know, obviously there's a concern that if AI is just making better music than people, then what's the point for people to make music? And I'm just rambling here. Feel free to jump in.
No,
I also
I'm
know
listening.
that cool. I also know that there has been that concern in other areas
Yeah,
too, like your chess is a big
yeah,
one. You and I both play chess,
yeah.
and it is true that chess in chess computers are better than any human will ever be, but people still play chess with people,
Yeah.
and actually people don't even really watch computers play chess that much.
It's
We
not
like
very
to watch
fun.
the people play.
It's hard to
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. Well. So then let me. This might be kind of more of like a metaphysical question, and there might not really be an answer, but I'd like your perspective on it anyway. Do you believe that there is a perceptible like human touch to music creation that an AI could never really do, or do you think that there is a possibility that might be able to emulate potentially that human element to the point where we wouldn't even really be able to tell the difference?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I know how to do that a computer couldn't learn to do. And I think that there's probably already examples of AI generated music that you would fail in a blind test on.
I did fail
Like,
on it when I heard something.
yeah,
I did fail.
yeah. So I don't think that it's like impossible for AI to do what humans do in music. I do think though that like, and I like very loosely think this. I could easily just be wrong, but I do kind of think that it seems like people just care about things that are made by people just because they know it's made by a person, not even because of any quality that the work itself has,
Mm-hmm.
but just knowing that a human made it, I think is important to people because it feels like it's like coming from someone, and like you want to hear what that person is saying. It's like again, it's not even necessarily about how the music sounds. I mean, obviously the music has to sound good, that's a given, but like if it's AI music that sounds good or human music that sounds good, there could be something extra valuable about the music that came from a human just because it came from me. In the same way that like we we like to watch humans play chess because they're humans, not because they're playing chess better than computers. It's just because we know that they're humans.
Let me ask you a little bit of a controversial question. It might be a spicy take you have on it. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. So recently, there's this making the rounds is an AI generated Dream Theater stuff where like AI is taking Dream Theater songs and turning them into like jazz and turning it into like bebop and things like that. It, if someone did that with Native Constructs music, if they did that, if someone took Quiet World and turned it into, like, I don't know, something that sounded like Enya or whatever, like, would you consider that plagiarism of your work?
Um, okay, well, first of all, I would love for anyone to do that. Please do that. I'd love to hear it. Plagiarism. I don't know. I don't even really know what the definition of plagiarism is. It might be. I don't know if it's like. I don't know how legal it is because I think.
Right now, it's completely legal.
Yeah. Well, so the music. I think the recordings. The recordings are owned by Metal Blade Records, but they don't. I'm pretty sure they don't own like the compositions.
Mm-hmm.
I think I own the compositions technically, but I don't care if people do that. So I don't know. It may or may not be technically plagiarism. I don't really know like how the definitions work out, but yeah, the bottom line is I think that's cool, just because I would want to hear it, and I don't think it takes anything away from me for somebody to do that.
So you'd be okay with someone just taking what you wrote and just pushing it through an AI on the other end and being like, "Hey, I did this. This is me and my AI's take. Like this is me and my AI's take on Native Constructs music. And since it's not their music, this is derived from theirs, but this is something that my AI did. That wouldn't bother you. Or
as long as they weren't like trying to say that they wrote the music, like it's entirely original. As long as they were saying like this is my take on Native Construct music, and ideally I'd like to get it cut.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, above all, I just would like to hear it because I think it would be very interesting.
Yeah, I've always been kind of a purist. Like I get a little bit peeved when I hear like EDM remixes of like Beethoven's Fifth and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I mean that's understandable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it comes from like if Beethoven were here to be like, yeah, I love this, then sure. But if you don't have the perspective of the composer, at what point are you just deriving your own gain from someone else's work? And I think that AI is, my opinion of it is that AI is going to blur those lines a lot in the future. A lot. And it's
yeah,
kind of
I think
scary.
there's a lot to be scared of.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. I mean, I love talking to you in general. I mean, I could ask you questions about stuff all day, but
yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, is there anything that you think that you want people to know, or any like general music concepts that you think would be appropriate, like or anything about songwriting or vocal writing or anything like that you think might be points of advice or tips for potential composers out there?
Tips for composers. I mean, there's so many. Yeah.
Like one specifically relating like writing vocals, like when you write vocal parts.
Well, I think probably this may or may not be just very obvious to everyone already, but I think one of the most important things to do is to sing what you're writing, because it's just so easy to get lost in the sauce as a composer, and you just start writing all these notes, and you're looking at your computer screen or whatever, and you lose sight of the reality.
Yeah, Bach did that. Bach did that, but unfortunately, he just expected everyone to do it anyway, and now we have, pieces with like 8 measure long 16th note melismas with nowhere to breathe. Yeah. Bach, he did that all the time.
Yeah, and so there's the aspect of like making sure that it's technically possible to do, but there's also like you want to be connected to the actual sound of the music that you're making, so that it sounds good too, so that it's possible to sing and so that it sounds good, because it's really easy for melodies to become like directionless, like they go on for too long, and it just, again, it's hard to sing, but it also doesn't. You typically want the melodies to feel singable because it sounds good too. things that are singable tend to be things that have clear, complete sentences in them. It's like if you were writing, like an essay in English, you don't want a bunch of run-on sentences without punctuation marks. You want
Right.
clear, organized sentences that are not too long, that make sense. And it's just so easy to lose sight of a lot of things when you're writing music, because it's sitting in a chair and working on a score is just such a different situation to be in than listening to music. So there's a disconnect there when you're sitting in your composer's chair. You need to bridge that gap from where you are to where the audience is going to be when they hear the music, and it takes a lot of effort to do that, because you just get lost in your own thinking. Nobody else is going to hear the music the way that you hear it as the composer, because you're spending so much time with it. You have such a different perspective on it because you're the one who's making it. I tried to encourage people to really go out of their way to try to imagine that they're the audience listening to their music. And so, one way to do that is to actually sing it out loud. Then it becomes real music in the air as opposed to concepts on a piece of paper. Obviously listening back, but listening to what you're doing and really imagining that you're not the guy who just wrote it. It takes imagination. You close your eyes and pretend somebody else just sent you this song, and you're listening to it as the outsider. And how would that hit you? How would it make you feel? When would you start getting bored? Are there any moments where you'd say, oh, that sounds kind of weird, that sounds kind of off-putting for some reason? Maybe there's a weird interval in there that you need to check. Are there any moments that are subtly painful when you're listening? Or are the moments that are really good? Are the moments that grab you? It's just kind of inhabiting the mind of the audience as much as possible. So that goes for vocal writing and the rest of the composition too. And now I'm rambling. So
dude, I could listen to you ramble forever. I got one more question for you, then we can end it. And this is based on my perception of things and my perspectives as a singing teacher and what I've seen in the modern world. There is demonstrably a huge emphasis, especially in men, male singers, for music to skew toward higher ranged, tenors, men with higher voices. Me being a bass baritone, I deal with a lot of questions about the baritone curse, and I find that a lot of people, especially in the in the public, that say they're baritones, they're not. They're just tenors that might be able to sing a low note here and there. But there's this big misconception of what constitutes an actual baritone range, and the world has been just overrun in the popular world with tenor voices. Would you agree with that? And why do you think that is from the perspective of someone who is trying to create something that the public would enjoy or appreciate? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have data to support this, but it just seems true to me. Yeah, I think tenors are probably the most popular male voice. I think there's probably a lot of reasons for it. There's probably some stuff in there about just the kind of emotional quality, or people relate to certain voices more or something. I haven't thought about that stuff too much, but just on a technical level also, I think there are reasons. It's in terms of composition and production, it's it's a technical challenge to have the foreground melody be a low voice. It's the same thing with in an orchestra.
Yep.
You usually don't hear a bassoon playing the main melody. It happens sometimes, but usually it's the violins playing the main melody.
I mean, part of singing opera as a baritone is we have to create what's called the singer's formant, which is literally an overtone pitch that comes from positioning the larynx a certain way, so that overtone, that formant pitch, occupies a frequency space that none of the other instruments in the orchestra do. Because if you don't have that, then the baritone voice gets mixed up with the trumpets and the cellos and all. It gets and how is one voice supposed to sing over 100 instruments or whatever. So we have to create this formant. It's the same kind of thing. We have the same struggles in the classical world too.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense though. Yeah, it's even just acoustically speaking, the higher voices cut through the arrangement better. And it's also it's hard to like the lower you go in pitch, the muddier things sound generally. It's literally because the sound waves are larger. They start to like get in each other's way more. The lower in pitch you go. So that's like, if you've ever walked up to like a grand piano and played like a C major triad, but just on the lowest
Lower.
octave, it sounds
Yeah,
like
so
totally
not
dissonant.
clear. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the spectrum. And obviously it's like very obvious all the way down there, but even like a bit higher than that, it's still not as clear as like on the right half of the keyboard. So yeah, like you just so very often in composition you want to have like your lead melody sitting on top of the chordal texture. So if you're doing that with a baritone, everything has to be lower now to keep the baritone voice kind of sitting on top. So now everything's getting kind of muddy and it sounds dark. It just doesn't project as much. You can't hear the notes as clearly. So when you're using a baritone as the lead vocalist, you have to be very careful with the arrangement. So like you're not always actually going to have the chords, fully below the lead melody. There could be, there could be some notes in the background textures above the lead voice and stuff. But you got to be careful with all that. Careful with how you voice things. So yeah, it's just harder to make it work, I think, in an arrangement. This all applies to production too. Like, it's going to be harder to manage the clashing frequencies between the baritone voice and the background instruments when the voice is that low. So I think it's just the tenor voice just like works more naturally.
I've felt this way for a long time. I've heard this opinion that you're giving me from other people before. It sucks because you can't help what how you're born. You can't help what your voice type is. Like, I'm a bass baritone. Like, I can sing on a great day in really good shape. I can sing to an F#4 in my chest voice, and that's on a really good day. I can nail those things, and that's just not. I mean, yes, it's okay, but in terms of like these guys that can consistently sing in the F#4, G4, A4 range, like those guys just consistently are going to get more jobs. They're going to be more sought after, and it's just a part of of modern music. I think that when you look back, even in the early recording era, you heard a lot more true baritone voices back then. I don't know if there was maybe the technology has lent itself to higher voices, but they're different in the modern era. There's absolutely been more prominent tenors, and I get I have baritone students and stuff that I've had throughout the years, and it's kind of it's a somber realization that we have to come to, that a lot of times, like, if you're trying to do popular music, people are just gonna the stuff's gonna be written for higher voices than yours. If you're working with someone else, it's very common. If you can write your own stuff that you can make work, that's great. But yeah, it's very difficult as a bass or a baritone to find a space in popular music as a singer. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your voice. It's a societal thing. It's a technological thing. It's not an indictment on the singer. It's just kind of the way that things are now, I think.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that too. I have a lower voice.
Yeah, you're a baritone for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, there's just not that much that I can sing. Like, that's probably honestly contributed to my like not practicing the voice that much, because there's just not that many songs that I like am excited to learn, because they're mostly outside of my range. Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely tough. That said, there certainly are ways to make the baritone voice work really well, and baritones can be cool in ways that tenors can't too.
Yeah, for sure.
They got
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
own qualities.
I hope that eventually there is a shift a little bit where people find ways to implement the lower voice into more popular music. Maybe one day, but yeah, I mean, we have a very
It'll
unique
probably come
timbre
back
sound.
around.
Yeah. Hey, maybe
Yeah.
when your next composition you can find something for a baritone to sing. I might where to
maybe.
reach me.
Right.
No kidding. Yeah, man. But thank you so much for this. Like, I mean, I always love talking to you. You're a brilliant mind. And
Yeah, likewise.
There's full of so much insight about so many things. So,
Thank you.
you are more than welcome to hit me up anytime you want about anything vocal related. And if to the audience out there, I almost forgot we were even doing a recording. To the audience out there, like, if you've never listened to Quiet World by Native Construct, and you're a prog fan, like, what are you doing? Like, just go out and listen to it. For me, it's I mean, it's hard for me to rank albums, anymore. I used to be a lot better at it, but when I think of Quiet World, I think of like S tier, like among the best ever. If you like progressive metal concept albums, it is, it's what you want to hear. I promise. So, check it
Thank
out.
you so much. That's super nice. You've always been super nice. I appreciate it a lot.
Hey man, your music was really impactful on me. Like I was really when at the time when I discovered Quiet World, it was like I was kind of not burned out of music, but I wasn't a professional musician when I first listened to that. I was actually working as a manager for a cell phone company at the time. I didn't reach out to you for voice stuff until I'd been teaching for a couple of years, but like I was just kind of sort of over like prog too. Like I was kind of like I kind of was getting burnt out on it. I'd listened to every Dream Theater album 50,000 times, and a lot of the like the gent stuff wasn't really resonating with me very much. And then I heard Quiet World, and I was like, wow, this is fresh. This is something new. This is something different. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, I might be nice about it, but like that's just the truth. I mean, your album, I think, your album was a standout of the time. It was really something different. So.
It's awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I hoped that people would like it, but it was not at all guaranteed in my mind. So this has been a series of very pleasant surprises that people still like it after all these years. It's crazy.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything I can relay to Myles, any questions you might have for him. And if you're looking for theory, composition lessons, hit him up. Check out his YouTube channel. It's Music with Myles. Is that right? Music with Myles?
Yeah. Myles with a Y also.
M-Y. Yeah. Music with Myles. Yeah,
Yeah.
check it out. I mean, it's just great. Some of those videos are just amazing. They break down concepts so well. So check it out for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was very fun.
All right, man. Thank you, everybody. Bye.